we'll let it count down. We'll count down so that we don't cut off anything for the podcast. Thank you, everybody. What happened to the stud linebackers in Week 12, and should we be worried that more? This week at the IDP Roundtable, Guru, give us some calming energy here, because some, including maybe you and me and others, are tilting over the Week 11 stud linebacker performances. Is there anything to learn or read into this?
Well, the biggest thing that there is to read into it and to learn from it is that none of these guys were hurt. Everybody came through all right. It was just a fluke week where about half of, or seemingly half of, the top 25 linebackers just took a dive. We started the conversation before we started the show here. Personally, I had one league where I had Jamie Collins, Darius Leonard, and Corey Littleton all in the same league. Now they hit 3 stud linebackers. I wound up with like 5 tackles, 4 assists, and a pass defended between all of them, and lost my game by 7 points. And that's just the way the funny ball bounces in this game. It's like any other sport. There's random things that happen that you have no control over, no matter how good your team is. Sometimes they're not going to perform. But we had this week, we had Luke Kuechly, 4 tackles and 4 assists, Shaq Thompson, 2-3, Corey Littleton, 2-1, Jamie Collins didn't record a sack or a tackle or anything else. He had a single pass defended. Devin Bush, 3-2, Leonard, 3-2, Tahir Whitehead, 3 tackles, 1 assist, Eric Kendricks, 2-4, Levante David was a stud with 5 tackles and an assist. Van Der Esch, 5 solo tackles, and you're just going to have that. Sometimes they pile up and you happen to have 2 or 3 of those guys and you move on to the next week. But the important thing here is it was just a fluke. You don't need to go searching and find out if your guy got hurt. That's why he didn't put up any numbers. All these guys played their normal roles, their normal snap count, and for whatever reason, varying from game to game, things just didn't go their way and they didn't put up the points that we normally expect from them.
Always. Let me say again, thank you, everybody. Last week we were off. We're back. Oh, sorry, excuse me. And next week we will be off for Thanksgiving. So everybody enjoy your time with your loved ones, or enjoy the time off. Enjoy the day of football. Some things to enjoy here. Always, we're enjoying being joined by Matt Schauf at SCHAUFDS, Draft DS for Draft Sharks. And let's go ahead and start on the defensive line, Matt. First, I'll cop to tweaking the Raiders a little bit whenever John Gruden said pass rushers are hard to find. They didn't necessarily find one in the 4th pick. They maybe found one in the 4th round. And one of the players, God, if they had Josh Allen. See, I'm putting your two together there, Matt. Put Josh Allen and Maxx Crosby on the Raiders. Then where would they be? In a 1st round pick from a few years ago, Derek Barnett. And of course, this is one of those situations where looking at the upcoming schedule, it can both help you find matchups to target for the offensive side, but the defensive side too. So let's talk about these youngsters on the defensive line.
I tell you, if they had drafted Josh Allen, they'd be baiting Khalil Mack and the Bears on Twitter right now. But as it is, they found a gem in Maxx Crosby late in the draft. I'm going to look at Clelin Ferrell's numbers a little bit more for my 32 IDP Things to Know article. But Maxx Crosby is the guy who's really doing it so far. The breakout game against the Bengals this week, of course, had 4 sacks there. But the week before against the Chargers, that Thursday night game, he had 3 QB hits in that one. Only half a sack, so it didn't look like as big a game. But this guy's been producing. He's got QB hits in 6 of his past 7 games. He's played at least 78% of the snaps in 6 straight games. So Maxx Crosby's been out there, been doing it. He earned this spot after being, I believe it was a 6th round pick. It was at least a 4th round pick. I can't remember his exact draft position, but late in the draft, later than he should. But you've heard about him before now if you've been listening to this show during the season. Now, he's got the Jets coming up this week, so I'm not going to project another 4 sacks, but I do have Maxx Crosby projected in starter range this week. After that, at Kansas City, then that's not a terrific matchup, but versus Tennessee, versus Jacksonville, at the Chargers again. If you play into Week 17, they've got Denver that week, so I don't think Maxx Crosby is done being relevant for IDP owners this season. Josh Allen, I mentioned a couple weeks ago. I mentioned him on here, mentioned him in my 32 IDP Things. the playing time dip was something to watch for. Consider me not worried about it at this point because Josh Allen has quarterback hits in 6 straight games. He has 2+ QB hits in 4 of those 6 games. He has had 3 quarterback hits in 2 of his past 3 games against the Jets and game against the Colts this past week. So he's getting into the backfield. He's making plays. There's a low tackle floor on Josh Allen. He's going to get about 2 solo tackles most weeks. That's what he's done so far. He's likely to stay in that range. But like I said, he's getting into the backfield consistently, making plays there. He's got sacks in 5 of his past 6 games. He's got 8 of them on the season. He has 9 tackles for loss. He has 16 quarterback hits. So expect to see Josh Allen in a backfield near you. Derek Barnett is the guy who's not put up the numbers so far, but could be a sneaky play over the next few weeks. Barnett saw a season-high playing time of 88% against the Patriots this past Sunday. It was his 3rd straight game of 80+%, though. He has played at least 66% in every game he has appeared in so far this season. Barnett's only got 3.5 sacks so far, but his 14 quarterback hits are tied for 19th in the league, tied with Justin Houston, a guy who's put up a lot more sacks, so the numbers are out there in front of you. Maybe show some of the upside that Barnett's hiding, and Barnett plays on a good defensive line where there's help around him. The offenses aren't focusing on stopping Derek Barnett. A lot of his hits came earlier in the season, but the upside is there. Seattle's a decent matchup for him for pass rushing this week, but beyond that sit the Dolphins, the Giants, and Washington in consecutive matchups. And really, those are the 3 games where Derek Barnett could turn into an IDP starter for a lot of people.
And maybe Carson Wentz could turn into a starter again, too.
Maybe.
We'll see. Nice. And by the way, for those of you who don't tune into the live show, you're missing the John Norton Easter eggs. He's giving you tips and edges because you're loyal. And always, if you're a subscriber to footballguys.com, you get Eyes of the Guru. We're staying on the defensive line, John. One of the things I want to point out here, it's usually, Belichick playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. Maybe it was Dallas. It was Stephen Jones playing chess. Michael Bennett. Also, New Orleans, we're watching their defense is coming alive again. They're going to get Kyle Allen, who was picked on unmercifully last week by Atlanta. What's going on with the New Orleans line? And speaking of Atlanta, all of a sudden you change the defensive play callers. Vic Beasley, who nobody wanted. Nobody would take him in the trade market. Adrian Claiborne, Zach McKinley. Got some injury situations there. And Cleveland. And we could probably do a whole interesting show on Cleveland. Is it bad for me to say I was hoping Mason Rudolph would get suspended as a Steelers fan, just, to improve the team? But we've got some fallout there from that situation. So Dallas, New Orleans, Atlanta, Cleveland notes on the defensive line, Guru.
All right, I'll touch on those things. But first of all, I think the Raiders pass rushers, Clelin Ferrell hasn't really come on that strong yet. He had the one huge game. But he, I think, is going to be a very good bookend for Max there. That dude has got a wingspan like I have never seen Crosby does. I mean, I was watching that game the other night, and I've been watching him play. I've been high on him, been talking about him in my column for the past several weeks that he's been getting close and just haven't hit the numbers yet. And I was watching this game, and there was one time that he ran and he put his arms out, and I swear to God, this guy looks like he's got about a 14-foot wingspan. I've never seen anything like it. So that's definitely a big plus when it comes to getting around the edge and leverage and all that stuff.
His mom was a pterodactyl, actually.
Is that what it was?
That's what I think it was, actually. Brian Baldinger. And Brian Baldinger is one of the best follows on Twitter. And because you just feel his enthusiasm for the game come through his breakdowns. I think that he did compare him to a pterodactyl.
Yeah, I mean, this dude is he's a physical freak. How he made it to the 4th round, I'll never quite understand. But, Mike Mayock's got a good eye is all I can say. All right, so the Dallas situation with Michael Bennett, we don't really know exactly what all happened behind the scenes in New England, but I don't think it was a matter of Bennett not being a good enough player. I think there was maybe some personality clash there, or maybe it was what Bennett said after it all happened was that he just felt he didn't fit the playing style that they were looking for in New England. I think it had more to do with attitude and off-field stuff than it necessarily did playing style, because we know the Patriots are very good at finding a way to fit just about anybody with any decent playing style into their system. But since he's gone to Dallas, He's played about 60% of the snaps. He's getting a lot of snaps as an interior lineman on passing situations. He has 7 tackles and assists and 3 sacks in 3 games since going to Dallas. He's been a big part of that defense, and he's going to continue to be a big part of that defense. He's not seen less than 60% of the snaps in any particular game so far. So this is a guy that we can pick up and plug in as a solid second lineman, just about any matchup. His ability to rush from the inside is something that the Cowboys were definitely missing, and it's definitely a plus for that defense. The New Orleans situation, basically what I want to mention there is the fact that Trey Hendrickson is playing more than Marcus Davenport, or at least he did last week. Whether that is a trend that's going to continue or not, we'll have to wait and see. Hendrickson had a good start to the season. Had sacks in a couple of games early on before he was injured. Now, since he's come back from the injury, he hasn't really worked his way back into a big role before this past week. Numbers didn't really come from it, but it's definitely a situation to watch, not only for the fact that Hendrickson may have more opportunity, but what's going on with Davenport, who has not been very productive of late. So there may be some changing of the guard or something going on there. Atlanta, is there such thing as a bye week miracle? I don't know, but this team sure looked different when they came out of the bye week than they did going into it. I've been watching, trying to figure out, see if I could put a finger on exactly what they've done that's different. It may just be play calling because they don't seem to be lining up any different or doing a whole lot of things different than what they were before. But they had 8 total sacks in 8 games going into their bye week, and they have like 13 sacks in the last 2 games coming out of the bye week. Vic Beasley has been on fire. He hasn't had more than 1 or 2 tackles in a game all year. He's had 5 tackles and 2.5 sacks in the last 2 games. Adrian Claiborne got on the field a little bit more last week when Tack McKinley left with a shoulder issue. Claiborne comes on and has 3 sacks in the last 2 weeks as well. McKinley got in on a sack before he got hurt. So we're seeing these guys off the edge in Atlanta really becoming a factor now. How long they can keep it up, maybe it's something that was done scheme-wise or whatever. Hopefully that's the case, and they will continue to produce. It's not like Beasley has never been productive before, but for the most part, he had 1 really good season, and then for the most part after that, it's been hit or miss, mostly miss with him from a fantasy perspective. Maybe they'll get something going and keep that going forward. The Cleveland fallout over the big fight and the suspensions and all that. I mean, anybody that saw that was just a very sad day for the NFL, sad day for football in general. Obviously, Garrett's gone for the rest of the year. Olivier Vernon, some of the words that came out this week is that he's close to returning, but he did not practice on Wednesday. Whether he's able to get back on the field this weekend or not, they're hinting that he should be back sometime really soon. Chad Thomas has sacks in consecutive games, 5 tackles and 2 sacks in 2 games, replacing Vernon. He's going to be a permanent part of the lineup now going forward, even when Vernon returns. He'll wind up replacing Garrett. And if Vernon is not back this week, we'll see Chris Smith slide into that other starting spot. These guys are backups, but both of them are capable pass rushers. They're obviously not the talent level of Garrett and Vernon. But at this point in the season, if you're scrapping and looking for somebody to fill some holes, if you happen to lose Garrett, you're probably going to have a hard time finding a better option for a replacement than Chad Thomas.
Thomas, like Crosby, athletically very talented, more talented than the defensive edge players that usually fall to the round. I think maybe it was a 3rd rounder. But the schedule again, Miami this week, Pittsburgh again, Cincinnati coming up those next 3 weeks for those Cleveland pass rushers. And we move on to linebacker. I'm going to tee up some things for you, Matt, about San Francisco, not just a specific player, Dre Greenlaw, who's in for Quan Alexander, a rookie, but also the environmental factors that go into his stats. Speaking of Miami, Jerome Baker on the rise. Speaking of that Buffalo-Miami game, what are the Bills linebackers doing that we should be noting? And Miles Jack, and it's kind of funny how these things like the universe winks at us, because I think it was just a couple weeks ago on this show that someone said, "What's up with Miles Jack?" And we were like, he just is not a great fit for what he's doing, but he's been doing better, at least for our IDP team. So Greenlaw and the Niners, Baker, the Bills linebackers, and Miles Jack.
All right. So We'll start with Dre Greenlaw, and he's seen 2 starts now. Well, actually 3 straight starts. The first start was a game that Quan Alexander played and got injured in, but 2 full-time starts since Quan Alexander got hurt. 8 tackles, 10 tackles in those 2 games. He's had a sack and interception over that stretch. So a really nice start for Dre Greenlaw. He's an ad in a lot of decent-sized IDP leagues at this point. That said, he didn't profile as a big play guy in college, either in the pass rush or in coverage. I would say he's pretty well set up in San Francisco behind, I guess, arguably the best defensive line in the league, at the very least, a very good defensive line. So he's in a good spot to make some plays. He's also been helped by some favorable situations over the past 2 weeks. You might have noticed that Fred Warner's numbers are up over that span too. The Niners have played their 2 largest defensive snap counts since week 1 over the past 2 games. And in those games, we're talking about a span of like anywhere from 11 to 28 more snaps than they played in any of the previous 7 games. So a lot more opportunities for Greenlaw, a lot more opportunities for Warner. That has helped their numbers. So let's keep that in mind going forward. We'll see if the defense is spending more time on the field or if it's been opponent specific. They played Arizona this past week, which has been one of the faster offenses in the league. So that's going to help play volume there. You know, there's plenty to like about Dre Greenlaw, and certainly Fred Warner is a weekly starter consideration, but let's see what those numbers do going forward. Jerome Baker has risen his numbers lately. I included him in my week 11 IDP things article. You know, we were off here last week, but he has stepped up his production over his first 6 games, 22 solo tackles, 37 total tackles. Over the past 4 games, 24 solos, 35 total. So has just about matched his 6-game production over the past 4 games. He's gone from averaging 6.2 total tackles per game over the first 6 to 8.8 over the past 4. Pretty big difference when you're talking about fantasy linebacker rankings. There's been no significant change in his playing time, in the team's number of total defensive snaps. From the Pro Football Focus grades, it looks like Jerome Baker's just playing better, and that's understandable. He's a young guy. He turns 24, I believe, in December. So I think we're just watching a guy ascend, a guy who entered the league as a speedy playmaker that obviously the new coaching staff in Miami liked, and I think he's kind of filling in what they were hoping he was going to be. He's actually also seen a bump in his pass rushing reps lately, so there's only been 1 sack on the season for him so far, but I think that there's some upside in that category still as well. On the other side of the matchup, Miami-Buffalo last week, we've got the Bills linebackers. Tremaine Edmunds, Matt Milano both delivered in that matchup. I think we all probably started them in most cases for that matchup. Tremaine Edmunds saw a season-high 13 pass rushing reps in that game against Miami in Week 11. Even his 6 the week before, though, were more than he had totaled over the previous 4 games. So we might be seeing the Buffalo linebackers get some more blitz opportunities. Alongside Edmunds, Matt Milano had 10 pass rushing reps 2 weeks ago. He had 12 against Miami this past Sunday. He had seen 5 such reps or fewer in each of his previous 6 games. So past 2 weeks, we've seen both Edmunds and Milano rush the passer more. If that continues, obviously it adds sack upside to him. The issue here, I think, more than, just trying to guess what the team plans to do, is that the next several opponents are really run heavy. I know we've got Denver in the mix. We've got Baltimore. We've got Jacksonville, I think, in there. I'm going with those off the top of my head at the moment. But over the next few opponents, we have a lot of rushing. So it might not be spots for Buffalo to blitz their linebackers. We'll have to watch that. But I think that Tremaine Edmunds, Matt Milano are starter or starter consideration players every week, and this is just kind of an extra upside step to add to them. And Myles Jack, we've knocked him a few times on the show, so we have to acknowledge when he's posted better numbers over the past few weeks. I do think that play volume is helping him out there as well. They've seen some more plays. They saw a lot of rushing attempts against the Colts this past week. For the year, Myles Jack, heading into this past week, I haven't checked this number after the game against Indianapolis, but he entered Week 11 ranked 89th in the league in solo tackle share. To put some context on that, he sat right behind Jonathan Joseph, the cornerback for the Texans, who had missed 2 games to that point, left 2 other games early. So, again, Myles Jack had helped us out the past few weeks, so maybe we can use him again. we'll see what he does in week 12. We'll see what he does going forward, but it's not time to think that he's totally changed his fortunes from the guy that didn't do much for us over the previous 8 weeks.
Coming up in week 12, a lot of Miles Jack diving at Derrick Henry's ankles and shins. That's what's coming up. Some more linebacker notes, John. We got usage to watch in New Orleans, in Chicago, in Oakland, and it wouldn't be the Chargers linebackers if there wasn't something totally out of left field to torpedo our lineups. And of course, we have another moving target with the Philadelphia linebackers, and a player we'll get to watch tomorrow night if you're with us on Wednesday night on Thursday Night Football in Houston, providing some pass rush punch. Run down some more linebacker notes for us.
All right, so we'll start off in Chicago with Nick Kwiatkowski. It was a hot pickup going into last week's game after Danny Trevathan went down. He came on, played every snap after Trevathan was injured, put up some big numbers for us, so everybody got all excited. And out of character, I bit on chasing the numbers as much as anybody else did, started him in 2 or 3 leagues this week. And, of course, he nearly flatlines. He wound up playing 36 of 55 snaps, back into a 2-down role. It looks like he may end up playing the next several games, although Trevathan has not been shut down yet. There's been some talk about him possibly going on injured reserve. But Kwiatkowski is obviously not going to get enough snap opportunity, or at least not a full-time snap opportunity, so he's going to be very much a matchup-based start if you use him at all. The Chargers, it seems like every week they're throwing us a different pitch. It's a slider, it's a curveball, or whatever. It's a drop-off-the-table pitch sometimes. So Drew Tranquill made his first start 2 weeks ago. Had good game. I think it was 5 solos, 6 assists, put up some pretty good numbers for us, played every snap in that game, looked pretty solid. Last week during practice, he was limited with a calf injury, but then come Friday, he did not show up on the injury report at all, and come game time, he's on the inactive list. So I'm not sure. They really haven't said anything about it, given there's no update on it. I don't know if he maybe aggravated the calf injury in warm-ups before the game, if something came up there or what the deal was, but he was not even active for this game. So being them going into the bye week this week, we're not likely to hear any more reports on that until at least next week. So if you were one of the people, one of the many people that scooped up Tranquill, if you're in a dynasty situation, I would suggest you hang on to him until we get some explanation, unless you need the roster spot. If you're in a redraft league, I would probably go ahead and dump him and move on this late in the season. We really don't have time to be waiting on people if you need somebody to fill in lineups. One other interesting fact that came out of this game, and this shows a little more craziness, is they actually started Jatavis Brown, and he played almost 80% of the snaps. And this is a guy that we already know from history shows us that they really don't like him, and they'll do just about anything they can to keep him off the field, which leads me to believe that there was something more to Tranquill's setting than just that they decided to make him inactive. The Saints linebackers, one I've been kind of watching all year, Kiko Alonso, when he went over there, I kind of had anticipated that he would develop a pretty big role quickly. He's been in and out of the lineup on a limited basis pretty much ever since the first day he set foot in New Orleans. Over the last 4 games, twice he has played more snaps than A.J. Klein, including this last week. He had played 45 of 68 snaps. He has 11 solo tackles in the last 2 games. I believe he had a pass defended or a sack, or he had one big play this past week as well. So he's starting to show some signs of coming around. Again, probably too late for us to worry about picking him up and playing him every week, but definitely for dynasty managers, somebody to keep an eye on, maybe pick up for those late season ads to carry over to next year. Now, this guy is a better pass defender than A.J. Klein is. He is a good 3-down linebacker in the NFL. And with an off season or more time to work with the team, I'll be surprised if he doesn't wind up being a starter and a significant contributor nearly every down come next year. Oakland and Cincinnati, Bengals cut Preston Brown, which is not really a big surprise. He had not been playing well, had not been playing much. And it's not very often that you see a defensive player get cut by a team that's 0-10 and wind up with a new job a couple days later. But apparently the Raiders are even more desperate for middle linebackers than Cincinnati is. And if you really watch Nicholas Morrow play a whole lot, you'll understand why. Nicholas Morrow is a special teams guy. He got forced into this role as a starter, and he is an NFL backup quality player. Not that Preston Brown is necessarily any better, but he does have some starting experience. So it will be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks if they try to work Brown into the lineup any. Mario has played virtually every snap since becoming the starter, or at least consistently played enough snaps to be a factor. Some weeks he's been a factor, some weeks he's not. So that's going to be an interesting situation to keep an eye on going forward. Brown has been productive at times in the past. Didn't really have enough opportunity playing time-wise while he was with the Bengals. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. One interesting situation with Preston Brown leaving, Jermaine Pratt saw his playing time boosted up. He played almost 70% of the time in Week 11. The numbers really haven't followed with that yet, although he has made some pretty impressive plays. If you're watching the games on the field, he hasn't really shown up that strong in the box scores, but I have a feeling that's coming. He's got a 5-game opportunity here to prove himself before the Bengals go into the draft. We know that they were looking at linebackers this past draft. They didn't get one because the Steelers traded up and took Devin Bush. So they went with the offensive tackle instead. So he's got five games to audition for that starting middle linebacker job for next year. And so far, what I've seen from him on the field has looked pretty good. The Eagles, the biggest news there that we've got to deal with is that Nigel Bradham started practicing again this week. Possibly could be back in the lineup this weekend. So what we need to figure out there is what that means for Nathan Jerry and Camus Brugier-Hill. My guess, somewhat educated guess, I guess you would say, is that Brugier-Hill is probably going to be the odd man out in this situation, simply because Nathan Jerry has played outstanding football for them since he got an opportunity to start and play every down. He's been on the field full time. Brugier-Hill has seen his snap count. When he first got back, it went up for a couple weeks, and since then it's been on the decline. He played his lowest snap total this past weekend in several weeks. So they may be kind of working him back out of the lineup. We know they like Bradham. We know that Bradham has played full time most of the time since he's been with the Eagles. So it's no sure thing here, but an educated guess says that we're going to see Nathan Jerry and Nigel Bradham playing virtually full time down the stretch, with Brugier-Hill basically picking up scraps. And then the last guy I want to talk about, mention here a little bit, is Brennan Scarlett with Houston. This is a guy that's had opportunity to get in the lineup due to injuries in the past and has never really been able to take the ball and run with it, so to speak. Since J.J. Watt is hurt, and he's not playing defensive end, but whatever they have done to adjust for J.J. Watt being out has been right in Scarlett's wheelhouse over the last 3 games, 13 tackles, 5 assists, and 3 sacks. Whether we can count on that going forward, I don't know, but it seems like with or without Watt, the Texans always find some way to play good defense, and Scarlett has been a big part of that over the last 3 games.
One thing we can always count on is these 2 bright IDP minds wanting to bring the same things to our attention. I think all but 1 or 2 of those things were also on Matt's notes. So again, Draft Sharks, check it out, SCHAUFDS. Matt, and none of us are that young. I mean, you remember some of the 80s, right?
Oh yeah, all of them.
So yeah, so where were you, the young whippersnapper you were then? Like, what did you like to listen to in the 80s?
Well, it depends on what portion of the 80s, because I've already dated myself to the beginning with the Thompson Twins reference, and I've been told
that's why we're on this subject, by the way.
I've been told that I was singing that at 3 years old. With hungover uncles at the breakfast table in the morning. So I think I started an uncle or 2 with that song for life.
It's funny. I think circa 1986 or 87, I still had my denim jacket with the Kiss Destroyer back patch. So, I'm dating myself there. But yeah, we got a Thompson Twins update. We're going to the defensive backs, Matt.
I don't know, though. I got to start with the linebackers first, because I had Scarlett too. And
yeah. So
I thought that we had a negative matchup for Brendan Scarlett coming this week against the Colts, but then I looked at the recent numbers, and the Colts have actually allowed 4, 5, and 3 sacks over the past 3 games. So it might be a good week to go ahead and try to use Brendan Scarlett.
Yeah.
On Drew Tranquill, it does look like it was an injury thing to me for Tranquil because he did turn up questionable at the end of the week with that calf and did turn up inactive for the game. I agree with John about dumping Tranquil. At this point, with the Chargers linebackers, I need certainty. I'm interested in Thomas Davis, and I'm interested in nothing else in the Chargers linebacking core. So we'll see where that goes. And the Nick Kwiatkowski, first of all, I just learned this week that it's Kwiatkowski when I heard him say it on the game. I was calling him Kwiatkowski because I speak English, and I go phonetic unless I've actually heard somebody say it. But Kwiatkowski with the imaginary W in the second half of the name. So they played a lot of 3-3-5, and I got this from. Let me scroll to the guy's name so I can make sure I give him credit. It was Jonathan Wood of the Bears blog. So he said that they averaged 3 D linemen, 3.6 linebackers, and 4.4 defensive backs per snap in this game against the Rams. They played a lot of 3-3-5 when they went to the nickel defense. So we saw a lot of coverage from Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd, and it did not work. The Rams made them pay in the run game. The Bears' run defense has sucked for weeks now, ever since the London game against Oakland. They've been bad. I mean, they let the Lions run for 98 yards. So you can see the bigger numbers for other opponents. But if the Lions are hitting you up for 98 yards on the ground right now, then you need to change something. So I think that heading into this week against the Giants, where if the Giants see an opportunity to get Saquon Barkley going, I think they're going to attack it. I would expect that we'll see more Nick Kwiatkowski in this game, and I would consider him like an LB4, like low-end LB3 with upside, because if he plays 80 to 90% of the snaps in this game, he could be like an 8, 9, 10 tackle guy.
So let me tee you up here for defensive backs. We'll go over some injuries and then to the Gurus matchup. So we got a Thompson Twins update. We still have DJ Swearinger in a new uniform. The Bucks are trying some things. It might not be working, but it's something to note for IDP leagues. And also with the Saints, they bounce back pretty quickly without Marshawn Lattimore. How did they do it?
Yeah, so we got to start with the Thompson Twins, and the Twins look like they're splitting up. I think they had the surgery. Jalen Thompson played 76 of 77 defensive snaps against the 49ers on Sunday. Deontay Thompson's had an injury lately, but he put in full practices all this past week. He was off the final practice report. He played 13 snaps on special teams. He played 0 defensive snaps. So it looks like they tried the Twins for a while. They picked a favorite, and it's going to be Jalen for now. I mean, we'll assume going into week 13 that that's going to be the case unless we hear something else through the bye week. But Jalen Thompson looks usable. Deontay Thompson should not be on anyone's roster. In Oakland, they signed DJ Swearinger because what the Raiders do is claim any free agent that has started games for other teams that gets dumped on defense. So it's DJ Swearinger. He started for the Raiders this past week. He had a team-high 7 tackles, 5 of those solo. He only played 60% of the snaps, though. We've seen all over that defense. Guys, their playing time will be everywhere. Carl Joseph's done it for 3 years now. So I'm going to go with not trusting DJ Swearinger over chasing his 7 tackles, and we'll see if anything changes on that front. In Tampa Bay, we've got bunches of injuries, and Vernon Hargreaves got dumped. He got picked up by Houston because that's what they do, is pick up defensive backs that nobody wants anymore that have started games. So he's gone. Slot corner MJ Stewart was out with an injury this past week. Carlton Davis returned from his hip injury, so he was in the lineup. Mike Edwards moved from safety to slot corner and got abused early by Jared Cook. I don't know why they didn't keep trying to do that, but they didn't. The game before that, Mike Edwards split playing time exactly evenly with Andrew Adams at the safety slot next to Jordan Whitehead. I almost said Jermaine, but next to Jordan Whitehead. So we'll see about MJ Stewart's health and then kind of project everybody else's playing time from there. But those are the guys playing where they are. And frankly, if things stay like that, I don't see why upcoming opponents would not target Mike Edwards in the slot, and more playing time for Andrew Adams could make him an option. And then finally, the Saints on the other side of that game did not have Marshawn Lattimore because of the calf injury. They pushed PJ Williams from the slot to the outside spot to take over for Lattimore, and it didn't look like they suffered against Mike Evans at all. They said Mike Evans said that they played him the same way. They had a safety over the top. They were basically doubling him on every play. Bruce Arians said after the game that they were basically doubling Mike Evans and Chris Godwin the whole day as he expected. So we'll see if it's a blueprint for covering the Bucs receivers. But for the Saints, as long as PJ Williams is in Marshawn Lattimore's spot, he's worth considering for tackle upside. Marshawn Lattimore was still not practicing this Wednesday, so no lock to be back for Week 12. And with PJ Williams out of the slot and playing outside, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was back in the lineup, played 91% of the snaps there. So he is an IDP option when he's available. We'll keep an eye on him. And that was with Patrick Robinson back healthy. So it wasn't that Gardner-Johnson was playing because Patrick Robinson, who was assumed to be the backup in the slot for PJ Williams, wasn't available. Everybody was healthy other than Marshawn Lattimore. Gardner-Johnson was the next one in. He's produced for us when he's been on the field in the past. This week, the Panthers, not a terrific matchup for DB scoring, but there's good target volume in their top two receivers at least. So again, PJ Williams worth a look this week.
And Kyle Allen had 4 picks last week against Atlanta. So, just play those defensive backs in the NFC South. And I want to emphasize both draft sharks and football guys. There's a lot of things that these IDP experts wanted to bring you, but we only have so much time. Let me let the guru rest a little bit as I go over some injuries. And again, IDP injuries not covered necessarily to the same extent as the offensive side, so it's a place you can get an edge by tracking these things up through Friday and even Sunday. Again, those defensive linemen for Atlanta, Adrian Claiborne, Tack McKinley, we're going to watch that. They're going up against Tampa this week. We're going to watching Olivier Vernon playing Miami this week. Got a knee. These guys, none of them practiced this today. Jason Pierre-Paul has a knee issue. Jonathan Allen for Washington and Daron Payne have ankle issues. Allen also has a knee issue. Trey Flowers has a concussion. This is in the Detroit-Washington matchup. Deshaun Hand has an ankle. A lot of injured defensive linemen here. Taco Charlton going up to Cleveland this week has an elbow issue. Looks like Jarrell Casey is going to be back for the matchup against Leonard Fournette. Gerald McCoy has a knee issue. He didn't practice today, and he's got a matchup this week against the Saints. Jerry Hughes has a groin issue. Shaq Lawson's coming on, so watch that. Jenny Trevathan, the elbow may put him on IR, so we're going to watch Nick Kwiatkowski. Again, we talked about Nigel Bradham. He's back, probably, at least back to a full practice. Raekwon McMillan, the lesser of the Ohio State linebacker twins down in Miami, he's got a knee issue. Jayon Brown looks like he's going to be back after the bye. Shaq Thompson was on the injury report with an ankle limited today, so we'll watch that again, that matchup against New Orleans. Rashad Jones goes to, if there was a good player on Miami's defense, they are all going to go to IR eventually. So we get that. Not going to see Justin Reed on Thursday night. Jaleel Adai will be starting. Sean Williams has a thumb issue. We'll watch that in this game against the Steelers. Janoris Jenkins, full participant coming out of the bye with concussion. We'll see what he does against Allen Robinson this week. Eric Reed's been on the injury report all year. He's got a knee issue. Monte Nicholson has an ankle issue. Both those guys were limited. Kari Willis, not going to play on Thursday, the rookie safety for Indianapolis with a concussion. Rocky Sin has an ankle issue. He's limited in practice, questionable going into that game. Also, Pierre Desir had a hamstring, but he is going to start, and he's not on the injury report. Morgan Barnett to IR. And Tracy Walker got back on the field, aggravated his knee injury. So it looks like we're going to see more Will Harris. And John, I know when I talk about denim jackets with back patches and things like that, I know you know my language, man.
I'm the old guy here.
Yeah, you can remember when Kiss still had the makeup on.
First time I saw Kiss, Van Halen was a warm-up band. So what's
there
that?
You go. Well, it tells me that you've probably seen some excellent concerts in your life. That's something.
Just a few. In fact, I saw Kiss last summer.
I saw they just played without Paul Stanley, like on someone's fishing boat or something. So I guess if we do a collection, maybe we could get them to come on the IDP Roundtable.
There you go.
Like that.
I don't know. Maybe we can get them to meet us in Vegas and play while
exactly.
That's retreat.
That's who you want to hang out with in Vegas. I have a feeling that like Gene Simmons knows the places to go in Las Vegas. John Norton knows the places to go when you set your lineup. And we got our last week with 4 teams on by. Let's hear about the matchups for Week 12.
Now, before I get into that, I'm going to kick one quick comment on DJ Swearinger. The guy was only in Oakland for 3 days last week and still played 60% of the snaps. I have a feeling he's going to play a lot more after they get him in and let him practice a few days and have some idea what's going on with the rest of the defense. we'll see how that goes. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be productive, but I think he's at least going to play.
Opposing tight ends hope to see more of him.
Yes, they do. Yes, that's why he makes a lot of tackles, is because he can't defend the pass. So the guys catch the ball, and then he tries to knock them down and grabs them by the ankles and drags them down the field a ways. But that still counts. It's a line drive on paper, right? All right, so guys, you want to get in your lineup this week? I like Michael Bennett versus New England, not necessarily because of the matchup, because as we have talked about several times, or I've talked about several times in the past, never underestimate the motivation a player gets from playing against his former team. We don't know what happened there, but I guarantee you Michael Bennett's going to be up for this game. Vic Beasley and whoever happens to be healthy enough to start opposite against him this week. With that matchup, they're just flat on fire right now. Whatever has changed there, we know Beasley's going to be in the lineup. Hopefully Claiborne will get the opportunity. I think he has the most upside as far as fantasy production goes. Like Jaron Reed this week against Philadelphia. He started off slow when coming back from the suspension, but he's really gotten into the groove. He has double-digit fantasy points in consecutive games. And Philadelphia, depending on which Philadelphia team shows up this week, will sometimes be a great matchup for defensive linemen, especially guys that get after the passer. We've already talked at length about Maxx Crosby and Clelin Ferrell. I think Crosby's a guy you want to start every week, regardless of matchup at this point. And I like Ferrell as well against the Jets this week. Chad Thompson versus Miami, another great matchup. The Dolphins have allowed 18 sacks over their last 4 games. And even without their top 2 pass rushers, I think the Cleveland defense is going to do a good job there. I like Dre Greenlaw against the Packers. The Packers are a decent matchup, but this is more based on what Greenlaw has shown me in the couple games that he has played. He scored 43 fantasy points over 3 games since Quan Alexander's injury. He has 15 tackles, 2 assists, an interception, and a sack in those 3 games. Neville Hewitt and/or James Burgess versus the Raiders. Raiders have a strong run game and have been a great matchup for linebackers over the last several weeks. I expect that will continue in this matchup. I like Marcus Golden this week against Chicago. Golden's been one of the few bright spots for the Giants defense all year. The Bears have allowed 3 sacks in each of their last 4 games, at least 3 sacks in each of their last 4 games. The defensive backs, Desmond Trufant this week against Tampa Bay. He's coming off a big game in his first game back from injury, and I have a sneaky feeling that he's going to end up following Mike Evans around quite a bit of this game, so there should be a lot of opportunity there. Another corner that's going to be shadowing an important player, James Bradbury against New Orleans. Panthers have been using Bradbury against their opponent's best receiver on most weeks, and we know how much Drew Brees likes to target Michael Thomas. I expect Bradbury is going to be following him pretty closely. Micah Fitzpatrick against Cincinnati. The Bengals have been a better matchup over the last few weeks than what they were early in the season, but this is not really based on tackle opportunity. It's more based on big play opportunity. The Steelers' defense is going to be way too much for the rookie quarterback. By the way, I think they probably would have beat the Raiders last week if they had actually started an NFL quarterback, maybe Andy Dalton, but that's hearsay. Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills against Seattle. You don't really think of Seattle being a great matchup for corners, but since week 6, the corner position has averaged 13.6 tackles, 3.8 assists, a turnover, and 2.6 passes defended against Seattle. Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage against San Francisco. 6 safeties have recorded at least 5 solo tackles against the 49ers in their last 4 games, including Budda Baker, who's reached double-digit solo tackles twice in those 4 games. A couple guys I'm going to get out of my lineup this week. Steelers inside linebackers against the Bengals. Again, not so much because the matchup is that terrible, but I've just come to the point where the Steelers inside linebackers are kind of like trusting the New England linebackers. They'll give you a big game one week, and then they'll vanish for a while. And a lot of that has to do with playing time. We saw Devin Bush, not this past game, but the game before, played 45% of the time. Came back this week, I think he had 80%. They've got 3 guys that they're working in there, and none of them are playing anywhere near full time. We're getting, 80% is about the top of the snap count for any of those 3 guys, and they're just not being productive on any kind of a consistent basis. And it's very difficult to bench a Levante David or even a Devin White after what he's done the last couple of weeks. that the Falcons are not a good matchup for linebackers at this point. You throw out Week 10 with the New Orleans game where they played their best game of the season. We've seen Corey Littleton put up 3 solo tackles. Bobby Wagner was 1-5 against them. Luke Kuechly and Shaq Thompson combined for 6 tackles and 7 assists last week. Between the matchup and the competition for tackles, there may not be enough opportunity for both of those linebackers to shine this week.
We appreciate that you give us your time and attention compared to the competition. And frankly, there's not a lot of competition in the IDP podcast and live stream business. That's why we enjoy doing this every week for you all. Again, next week we'll be off for Thanksgiving. Hopefully some of you are enjoying things that will lead to hangovers and have 3-year-olds singing for you at some point. Different times. I remember one time, Matt, I was talking about holiday memories and how, as kids, we would try to find drinks that are the adults in our extended family left on a table somewhere. And someone looked at me like, I guess it was just a different time back then. But this is where I'm turning this into an On the Couch episode. I'm going to start analyzing myself here. Thank you, everybody, always for supporting supporting what we do in the fantasy football industry, supporting our work. Again, you can follow Matt at SCHAUFDS, and you know where to find the Eyes of the Guru every week as a football guy. Subscribe to all the other great IDP content at footballguys.com. We'd like to provide you the best always, folks, because you're so very classy.